Welcome wherever you are. You're in the Gunners Club. You're here with Gunner, and today you're here with Dixie as well. And the question is Xbox dead?
Xbox on. When's the last time you've heard that?
How long's it been since Xbox actually was on, Dixie?
Xbox One was not the end of the Xbox. I know people say that, but I actually assert it wasn't. And let me tell you why. Things were actually going matching with Sony at the time. Sony announced 1 million sales within the first week. 1 week later, Microsoft countered with the very same message. 1 million sales. The Microsoft team actually took struggling publishers and actually brought them up to spec. So for instance, Diablo was now running at 1080p. So this was the expertise to actually show that they weren't a lame duck, they had the power, even though they weren't winning the power narrative at the time.
Yeah, they certainly weren't. But after the Xbox One, which I think was a bit of a lull for Microsoft, asking people to have their console always on, really depending on them to be able to upload the games and things like that. And then the introduction, and I guess the heavy reliance on Kinect as well.
For sure. The first thing was the lack of bandwidth that we had. You had a disc that was a little more than a code. So people were downloading motorsport games and finding that their whole monthly allowance was already gone. Never mind the having to be connected all the time or intermittently. Second thing, Kinect was a cost that actually gave you less processing power in return. It was a bad deal. My argument is that Xbox had the swagger, and it still had it in the first couple of years of Xbox One. It wasn't done in Australia. And just allow me to explain to you why I say that. Microsoft was introducing its own television studio and was going to produce good quality games with their own physical location. And we found something like that in Quantum Break.
A great game.
A great game which only came out a very limited pixel count at the time, but spec'd up for the One X, was a great game. And having a great cast in it, with actual 4K footage that you could download while you were playing the episodes independently, was quite a miraculous game. They were actually thinking forwards. I think that came out very, very strong. And I think they were also considering their English audience at the time, which, not just being North American Canadian, I think it was right to come through. Now, the Gamers Party had brought to Australia their R-rated classification. So we could really have everything. Xbox could be gutsy. A game like Son of Rome was now possible in Australia.
That's right, which was a launch game, wasn't it, for the Xbox One?
How much historical characters are already written here? Now, I know they took liberties with, like, for instance, putting in Boudicca or Boudica as one of the heroines that you had to destroy. But in itself, that was a pleasure. I know she didn't really belong in the timeline, but having as a final boss this a female character who didn't win that you could actually triumph over for the narrative of the game was just extraordinary. Why they never brought this back? Because this is a game where you'd love to lay siege to England.
I think so too, and in a computer world at the moment where we're just so besieged by franchises, this is one which has really been begging for another one to be made. You could say the same of Titanfall as well. Look at the time of the release of the Xbox One. I disagree with you to some extent. I think this is where there was a real chink in the armour of Xbox. We'd gone through the glory days of the Xbox 360, where some of the great defining franchises of Xbox were released for the first time or developed. And they had the narrative of you have to have the console always on, and if you don't have the deep enough pockets to purchase that console, well, there was always the Xbox 360. And surprise, surprise, we're hearing the exact same narrative at the moment in the anticipation of the release of the Switch 2. And Nintendo saying that, well, this is the price of it, but for those who can't afford it, there's the original Switch which you can still purchase. And quite a lot of backlash against it. I think the 360 was really the halcyon days of Xbox because it was a really gutsy, proud console. The games which are there were full action. It was full of confidence as well. So let's talk about things like Gears of War, Dixie.
Right. Now, which Gears of War would you rather play? Would you rather play Gears of War, where you were one of the 3 great bodybuilders of the day.
That's right.
You could pretend you were Rich
Piano.
Right. You could pretend you were Dave Bautista. You could pretend you were a 300 pound Hulk. Or would you rather play Gears of War 4, where you have to mop up robots? Who cares about attitude when you're fighting robots? Or would you like to, for instance, be the female in Gears of War 5? This is not what I bought an Xbox for. I wanted, and going back to the launch of Xbox, I wanted the growl. I wanted the rumble. I wanted, for instance, in my motorsports, to have the Australian Bathurst V8s actually playing on the track and on a risky track. Coming out with the following Forza Motorsport 6 when we were in Dubai, the tracks were shiny, they were completely
Tame.
level, there was no kick on the tracks to actually throw you off like you're driving on a bracket. There was no sense of risk. Whereas in the earlier launch title, like Forza Motorsport 5, there was the real feeling of risk. And of course, commemorating the end of the motor factory in Australia.
That's right.
Forza Horizon 3, which was set in Australia, and an absolutely fantastic game.
That's right. It was around the time that we'd had the last shipment of the V8 engines in from America to make the General Motors Holden vehicles. Ford had already shut up its shop, and Toyota was just about to do the same as well.
Sadly. Going back to the first couple of years of the launch of the Xbox, some strategies didn't work. For instance, putting a time exclusivity on a franchise that wasn't their own with the second of the Tomb Raider reboots. I think you've got to have exclusives, otherwise you've got no bragging rights. Okay, the same reason I think you've got to have a physical media, just because it's so much more fun to share and it keeps it as a shared experience for that much longer. And it was fun saying to my mates at work who played PlayStation, by the time you get the game, all the tombs will be empty. We'll have taken all the loot. There'll be nothing left. In Sunset Overdrive, we sort of thought that the Xbox One was going to move from the grey or camouflage palette that was Gears of War and give us the gelati colours.
Yes, I agree. And also Borderlands was similarly, I think, visceral with the colours as well, an explosion of the palette.
No, this was before the Xbox One Series S, which had the HDR colours, but it still gave you variety. But even in this launch title, which was packed in with the console that I bought, this was the start of woke, where you were given an introduction screen to model your characters, and you were encouraged to explore with outrageous costumes and gender fluidity in the game. I can see this was the start of it looking back, although it didn't really affect the game, although in parts it did. Can you show me some of the favourites from your old Xbox 360?
Well, I think for me, the Fable series, I think, was fantastic fun. Set in the world of Albion. Now, Albion is probably the oldest existing word that we have for what was originally what we recognise today as England. So that actually means something. It's set in old England, and that means that the characters, the attitude should be English. Now, increasingly we're moving away from the idea of it actually being set in an early England, much as something like Amazon's Rings of Power is moving away from Middle Earth, which was again a recreation of ancient England. When I purchased the Xbox, I remember the decision was, it was soul searching. Do we buy, in fact, the PlayStation 3, or do we buy the latest Xbox at the time? And I said to you, I want the experience of the European dreaming. That's what I want to purchase. And at that time, you know, I'd played the Nintendo and enjoyed that, but I consciously wanted something that recreated that mythical Europe, let's say. You know, that I guess my heritage to some extent as well. And it's moved on from that, whereas we have a place, for goodness sake, called Albion, which is no longer even recognisable in the trailers I see for the new Fable, which we're still waiting for, as being Albion whatsoever at all. We have a Gears of War, which was all about muscly blokes with chainsaws which are cutting up aliens, which is basically gone. In Australia, we were always a bit squeamish about things like violence, and the censorship was there. For example, blood would often be black. Instead.
Of course, having a character with a name like Carmine in Gears of War tells you, no, what is the colour of blood? carmine is the color of blood, so we could get around it. I remember you were playing this game when you first bought it during a particularly deep drought in Australia. And maybe you'll always think of this as a sanctuary.
I think so, because we had the smell of the bushfires from the country, and I was lost in the deep forests of ancient England. Bioshock as well, I think, is the game which got both of us into gaming, and particularly into Xbox at the time. I understand we're waiting for a new game to come out from the creator as well.
Well, it was very good of the company to have continually given updates on 2 occasions. Not just with frame rate, but stability of the frames, and also with the pixel density. So they were very, very generous that way, and that was part of Microsoft's strategy, that they kept you on board because they told you there was some kind of bond between the player and the company themselves. That was very good. I think that's why Microsoft have continued as long as they did.
And I think extending that is the idea of the subscription-based Game Pass. Now, we don't know with the latest generation how many they've sold. We understand the figure is somewhere around 30 million. The Game Pass is something which you can use on not just the Xbox, but also on a PC and on a streaming device. There's about 34 million subscriptions at the moment. Sure. Their aim is to have a number of about 110 million. So they're looking at making it more accessible and more part of the experience based with having the Xbox. But what they've been doing, I think, is basically destroying their own turf. So, for example, Halo, we're expecting that to come shortly to Sony.
Let me tell you about Halo. I really enjoyed Halo 4 until Cortana, who was the AI assistant. See, you've got clone soldiers who were created and reaching maturity to 7 foot tall at a very, very early age, and having a very fawning relationship with a hologram called Cortana. Strangely enough, Cortana became Microsoft's artificial intelligence
for a short time.
Yeah. And I refuse to use it because I don't want to slavishly fawn. Now, in Halo 4, she undergoes rampancy, which was described in Australia as undergoing her menopause. Halo 5 Guardians, you didn't get to play the Master Chief, you got to chase the Master Chief. No, I want to be the hero. Why can't I just turn on the game and be the hero?
Yeah, and that Halo was specifically about those hero moments, wasn't it? You know, running your all-terrain vehicle and jumping through a spaceship at the same time.
That was the strength of it. I wanted to be the Master Chief. Nobody saw the Master Chief except at the end of Halo 4, if you finished it in legendary status. I always played heroic. That was a feat for me. And then you got to see a sort of occluded view of the Master Chief. But you could be the Master Chief. The reason why Seamus is not cool in Nintendo is everybody knows it's a woman. You know, when you're playing that the same kind
Metro
of battle
Prime.
game.
Yeah.
Now, I think that Microsoft has lost the contract with countries. Microsoft had a contract with Britain because they had these 2 great games. Where is the next great one? Had a contract with Australia because we had a great Mount Panorama racing track. We had our own V8s. We had Forza Horizon 3. Where's the contract for the next one? Gone. Unfortunately, Microsoft.
Well, I'd say not only that, but actually some of the greatest intellectual property that they've got, they're now sharing with Nintendo and with Sony as well. Now, think about this. One of the most successful franchises that there are, period, and if you go to your local cinema, they're going to be showing the Minecraft movie right now. That's a Microsoft franchise. They didn't create it, they bought it, but it's theirs. Imagine if that was kept exclusive to Xbox. Sure. It'd be a reason for you to buy an Xbox to share that game with your kids, wouldn't it? Forza Horizon 5, now available on Sony. Sea of Thieves, that was the next great thing through the Xbox One. It took a long time to develop that, but now that's available as well. And if we ever talk about that, and we talk about things like wokeness, you know, that you can select a character in Sea of Thieves. It can be physically male, but you can choose the voice to be female. I understand what Xbox is moving towards, which is accessibility of gaming for all, and I have no trouble with that, or a safe playing space. But is that the market that they want to go for? Remember, we've gone through great games, really horror, like Bioshock. We've gone through Diablo, where you're chasing demons, Tomb Raider, where you're effectively going through the shrines of ancient gods. And then we're starting to
say
develop
no,
games to that
she
palette.
can't raid tombs anymore because it's not great. Microsoft used to listen. C themes took a long time to reach maturity.
Very
In
long
fact,
time.
At an E3 Expo, we saw them on one of the tall ships. We saw that people were invited there for a
That's
promotional launch.
And we were given a cosmetic temporary tattoo sleeve to wear as well.
A few years later, when you removed your eye patch, they were listening into gameplay and people were actually speculating, do you know that there's a kraken within the middle of the ocean? Of course there wasn't, but they thought, what a great idea. We'll put them in. So they were listening to people. But that were the times when General, there's the name of the Xbox player, he used to Major Nelson.
That's right.
He used to be able to play, and he used to be online. You could see his gamer score. You know, that's what accessibility is, not changing the voice of the character to.
So is Xbox dead? Well, they've basically shared all of the major franchises. There has been no contract kept with any country regarding the progression of any other games or intellectual properties that they've got.
Or respected their heritage,
And
really.
But they have effectively made some new announcements, so we're expecting the new generation of Xbox to come out. Some say maybe the last for consoles in around 2027. They promise us it will be the greatest technological leap in development of a generation. So that probably augurs quite
Given
well.
they have no machine learning yet, it's got to
But
be.
you see, they have actually lost the power game. Now, after Xbox One, they had the Series S, Series X. By having a Series S all the way through, with the One as well, they basically said that, okay, we concede on the power game with the lower-end console, which was their biggest sellers by a country mile. But if you were a full-on gamer and you wanted the experience, for example, this is of the Series X, this was the most powerful console on Earth when it came out. PlayStation have recently released a Pro for the PlayStation 5. They've conceded that ground now. So they're no longer about the safeguarding their franchises, the contracts with people, respecting the history, or even playing the power game. What in fact are they about? Well, we know the development of the gaming at the moment is going towards things like a Steam Deck, or with the Switch and the Switch 2 about to come out. These are mega popular things. So there's currently the Project Keenan, which we're expecting for a handheld Xbox device to come out this very year.
It hasn't really aged with its audience, unless you've got a family and then you want to pass it to your kid. That I can understand. But if I could actually answer the question to, has Xbox had its day in Australia, I'd say Xbox off.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you on the next one.